How did Malaysia overtake Singapore to become Southeast Asia's fastest-growing data center hub? Singapore had the infrastructure, the stability, the global reputation, everything a technology company could want. Yet today, Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, and many more are pouring billions into Malaysia. And its planned data center capacity now dwarfs every other market in the region. The answer to how this happened starts not with Malaysia's strengths, but with Singapore's limits. For years, Singapore was the obvious home for Southeast Asia's digital infrastructure. It offered political stability, world-class connectivity, reliable regulation, and an established financial system. If you needed your most important servers somewhere in Asia, Singapore was the answer. But data centers are not software. They are enormous physical buildings that need vast amounts of land, uninterrupted electricity, and, in tropical climates, huge quantities of water just to keep servers from overheating. For a city-state with no hinterland, no spare countryside, and nowhere left to expand, those requirements were always going to hit a ceiling. By 2020, data centers were consuming around 7% of Singapore's entire electricity supply. That is a staggering share for such a small nation. The pressure on land was equally acute. So in 2019, Singapore made a striking decision. It paused all new data center approvals. For 3 years, no new facilities were built. The moratorium was the right call for Singapore, but it created a vacuum, and vacuums get filled. The fill came from just across the water. Johor sits at the southern tip of the Malaysian peninsula, connected to Singapore by a bridge you can drive across in minutes. For most of its history, it was known for plantations, ports, and manufacturing. Nothing about it screamed global technology hub. But in the early 2020s, something changed. Technology companies that had been queuing to build in Singapore suddenly needed an alternative. Johor offered everything Singapore couldn't: large industrial plots, cheaper land, lower construction costs, and electricity at competitive rates. Better still, it was close enough to Singapore that technical teams could coordinate easily, and fibre connections between the two countries meant data could travel with almost no delay. Companies realised they could keep their headquarters, financial operations, and client-facing teams in Singapore while placing their largest server campuses in Malaysia. It was not an either-or decision. It was a division of labour. That proximity turned Johor from a low-cost backup option into something more valuable, a genuine extension of Singapore's digital ecosystem. The cost gap is what made investors move fast. According to research cited by JP Morgan, building data center capacity in Malaysia costs around $7 million per megawatt. In Singapore, the same megawatt costs roughly $12 million. Singapore's monthly data center rents run between $330 and $475 per kilowatt, among the highest anywhere on Earth. For a hyperscale cloud or AI operator deploying hundreds of megawatts of capacity, that difference is not a rounding error. It is hundreds of millions of dollars. And in Malaysia, you do not just save money, you also get room to grow. Johor has sites spanning hundreds of acres, something physically impossible in Singapore. The result has been a pipeline of investment that is almost hard to believe. Malaysia now has nearly 13 gigawatts of planned and developing data center capacity. To put that in perspective, that is larger than Singapore, Indonesia, and Thailand combined. In 2020, Malaysia had roughly 24 data center sites. By 2025, it had 46 operational facilities and another 48 under development or planned. The marquee names arrived quickly. Google announced a $2 billion investment for its first Malaysian data center. Microsoft committed $2.2 billion to cloud and AI infrastructure. YTL Power, a Malaysian conglomerate, formed a $4.3 billion partnership with Nvidia to develop AI infrastructure in Johor, including Malaysia's first Nvidia-powered supercomputer, now operational. ByteDance, AirTrunk, Tencent, Alibaba, NTT, and dozens more followed. A state once better known for rubber and palm oil was being rewired as a center of global computing. But scale and low costs alone do not explain why Malaysia won this race over other regional competitors. The country offered other advantages that were harder to replicate. Malaysia is connected to major international submarine cables. Its workforce is largely English-speaking. It has an established electronics and semiconductor industry, particularly in assembly and testing, which means the infrastructure, the skills, and the supply chains to support large technology projects already exist. When a global chip company wants to build nearby, Malaysia already knows how that conversation goes. The government also moved quickly. Malaysia prepared industrial technology parks with ready infrastructure, introduced a streamlined pathway for utility connections through national grid operator Tenaga Nasional, and created the Corporate Renewable Energy Supply Scheme, giving large data center operators access to cleaner power. In an industry where securing electricity on time can be the difference between winning and losing a customer, speed of approval became a genuine competitive weapon. The Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, now taking shape, could cement this further. A formal framework for cross-border investment that plays to both countries' strengths. Singapore provides capital, connectivity, talent, and premium services. Johor provides land, scale, and computing muscle. One region, two economies, one supply chain. But Malaysia's rise as a data center hub is not entirely straightforward. Data centers run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, consuming electricity at a rate that never drops. AI servers are the most power-hungry of all, and they generate enormous heat that has to be removed continuously. Malaysia's data centers currently use an estimated 7% of available energy capacity. But projections suggest that share could approach a third of the country's entire electricity supply by 2035. Power stations and transmission lines take years to build. If renewable energy cannot keep pace with demand, this boom could create a carbon problem at exactly the moment global technology companies are making climate commitments. Water is equally sensitive. A 100 megawatt data center uses roughly the same water as a town of 10,000 people, just for cooling. Johor has previously experienced water disruptions affecting ordinary residents. As global technology companies compete for land and resources in the state, the question of who gets water first is not abstract. It is a daily anxiety for people who live there. Authorities have started responding. Johor has stopped approving the most water-intensive facility types and has rejected proposals without credible sustainability plans. Operators are shifting toward recycled water and closed-loop cooling systems. New substations are being built around major technology parks. These are real steps, but the scale of what is being approved still outpaces what the grid and water system can comfortably absorb. Public acceptance has become a constraint too. Residents near projects in Johor have raised concerns about dust, noise, cleared greenery, and pressure on water supplies. A data center needs more than a permit. It needs neighbours who do not block it. And right now, that trust is not guaranteed. Yet none of this erases what Malaysia has already achieved. The investment numbers are not marketing spin, and Malaysia's pipeline of planned capacity is larger than any other market in the region. But the decisive question has shifted. It is no longer whether Malaysia can attract data centers. It is whether Malaysia can sustain them, and whether ordinary Malaysians will actually benefit from having them. That means expanding power generation, growing renewable energy, and improving water infrastructure so that communities near these projects are not left competing with global technology companies for basic resources. It means building a workforce with genuine expertise in the systems being built, from grid engineering to cybersecurity to AI operations. And it means navigating geopolitics carefully. Malaysia hosts both American and Chinese technology companies, and with advanced chip export restrictions tightening globally, credibility as a neutral and trustworthy computing hub is not something easily rebuilt once lost. Singapore, meanwhile, has been watching all of this unfold with characteristic deliberateness. Rather than competing with Malaysia on volume, it has doubled down on quality. The city-state is resuming controlled growth, around 300 megawatts of new approved capacity, with up to 200 more available for the greenest operators. But every new facility must meet some of the strictest efficiency standards in the world. Power usage ratios that ensure most electricity reaches computing equipment rather than cooling systems, mandatory renewable energy procurement, and advanced liquid cooling requirements. Those standards make Singapore expensive and exclusive. But that is precisely the point. Scarcity supports premium rents. Strict rules attract customers who pay for reliability, security, and regulatory certainty. Singapore is not trying to capture every megawatt of demand. It is optimizing each one it has. As JP Morgan put it, Singapore optimizes every megawatt. Malaysia captures the next one. For now, that division of labour suits both countries. But capturing megawatts is the easy part. Malaysia moved ahead of its neighbours because it could provide capacity when Singapore could not. Holding that lead will require something harder to build than a data centre. A sustainable industrial ecosystem maintained over years that earns the trust of investors, neighbours, and the national grid alike. The servers are already running. The real work is just beginning. But while Johor positions itself as Southeast Asia's engine room for data and AI, its people face a different kind of disruption closer to home. The completion of the RTS link with Singapore could reshape daily life in Johor in ways that have nothing to do with servers or megawatts, and not everyone is convinced it will be for the better. Watch the next video to find out why.